Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Podcast, part of the Authors on Air Global Radio Network. I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. Thank you for all of those who are joining us live and for those who will join us on the replay. We're excited to have you here today. I am joined with JM Landels. She is the managing editor of Pulp Literature and the author of the beautiful series, Elenias Song. Welcome, JM. So excited you're here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Laurie.
You're so welcome. I'm really excited to dive into your beautiful series. You are a beautiful storyteller with amazing descriptions within your story. There were multiple pieces in your first book where I paused to reread the sentence because it was just so beautiful and I wanted to soak it in. And also moments where I laughed out loud, which we'll talk about some of those here in a minute. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your first book and then also Aria, which is book number 2, which just came out last month?
Last year.
Last year. Okay. Last year. Will you dive in and tell us a synopsis about book 1 and 2? And we'll jump into book 3 is coming out this fall.
That's right. So Elenias Song Overture is the first book there. It's a coming of age novel. So the main character starts off the novel as quite a young girl, and it takes her up to about the age of 13. And she discovers early on in her life that she has the ability to sing music into magic. And she finds this out because she accidentally sings a lullaby and nearly kills her baby brother. So it's a double-edged sword. It's, an ability that she's inherited from her grandmother. But it's something that is slightly illicit, not approved of by society or by her family. So she has to keep that secret. And so that part of the book takes her just through her life growing up and all sorts of mishaps and adventures as young people do get into. But the other 2 parts of the novel are told from the point of view of her grandmother and her mother. So her mother was a princess who was married off to a duke in a different principality, and en route to her wedding, she ends up being ambushed. And that is sort of the action, adventure, romance part of the story. That part takes place within a span of 2 weeks when the princess went missing for 2 weeks. And very few people know what happened, but that tells that story. And then the story of her grandmother. Her grandmother is a seer, so she's a member of a nomadic community or nomadic people in this world of the Ilmar, and she has the ability to see the future, but not always clearly, and not always usefully. But she tries to make use of that. So she has her manipulative fingers in every pie that she can, trying to do the best for her family, but also trying to do the best for the people of the Ilmar. She has to weigh these things. So they're told different points of view, different voices. So the main narrative is straight up first person past. The Irdane's story is told in first person present, and Lorace's is told in third person present. So they're very different voices.
What can we expect from book 3?
So by the end of book 1, the stories of the mother and grandmother converge to the same timeline. Their stories continue in book 2, but book 2 is more about Allegna's adventures, as it takes place again in a short period of time and a big transition in her life after she runs away from home. And then book 3 happens about 6 years later. So there's a 6-year gap. She's an adult. She's an accomplished woman, and she hasn't been home for 6 years. So she's got a lot of things she needs to do. She's been sent on a mysterious mission to deal with some dangerous magic, and things she finds out there make her question everything she thought she knew about her grandfather and the politics of the world she lives in. And so she still has to deal with these things and make peace with her family.
I'm really excited to see book 3 and the growth between book 1 and 2 leading into what she's starting to realize as an adult in book 3. That's going to be, I'm super excited about that. Welcome, Allison. Allison says, so interesting when the different POVs have different time frames too. I love that too. I think that's a lot of fun, getting a different feel. And is that something, JM, that you noticed, like doing different POVs? Were you able to see the world differently and get into your characters' heads in a different way by using different POVs? Or is it similar?
Yeah. And as I'm editing the conclusion of the book, I'm like right in the final chapters now. The points of view switch back and forth rapidly because in the final chapters, all 3 characters are in the same place at the same time. And that's pretty much the only time in the whole series that they are. So I've been having to choose whose point of view to write each scene in. Because, and sometimes I choose to write the person who has the most action from somebody else's point of view, because it's a slightly more interesting to have, Elenia's mother observing her doing these things than to have Allaigna narrating it. Yeah. So that's fun, but it's also been challenging as a writer. all these threads, where am I?
Do you do a lot of plotting or weaving, like bullet boards, so you know how the lines come together, or how does that look for you?
No, and if I did, it would have made life so much easier. It's all up here, and I write. I do my first draft with a process called the Hour Stories by an amazing Vancouver writer named Dale Adams Segal, and my fellow editor at Pulp Literature, Mel Anastasio, and one of the other founding editors, Susan Peters. We have been writing this way together for a long time. We meet once a week. We sit down, we write for an hour using these sort of story prompts. So sometimes what comes out is not what you were planning to write, but it's usually better than what you were planning to write. So then, because my novel is really a collection of all these hour stories put together, sometimes it takes me places I wasn't planning to go. And yeah, if I kept like a little bulletin board or used a Scrivener or something like that, maybe I would not be struggling so much right now, but that's just my process and I have to live with it.
I really like how you had mentioned taking your hours and compiling them together, because you just don't know where you're going to go. So it gives it that sense of adventure and kind of awe. Do you find awe when you're like, oh, whoa, I wasn't planning on that. I guess we're doing that now.
Oh yeah, all the time. Like it is so, I love writing first draft because it is like reading a story. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen, right? Or, I know where the character's going in the long term, but I just don't know how they're going to get there and what roadblocks they're going to encounter on the way.
You're exploring right there with your character. You blend 2 of my favorite things. I love magic and elements of magic, but I also really love music and expression. And so I love how you brought those both together to make this a beautiful theme within your story, but then you also share both sides of it, how it can be used for good, but also how it can be used for wrongdoings as well, and seeing both POVs on that. What inspired you to make that as your main theme, to bring in magic and music together?
Well, I used to be a musician. I did have a stint of playing in rock bands in London and Vancouver. So music music is always very interesting, and I've always been interested in the character of the bard, right? Whether in storytelling, like in Morgan Llewellyn's books and things like that, or Welsh myth, and also sort of the more modern fantasy takes of the bard character. And people always sort of like, role-playing games make fun of the bard. Oh, what are I play a tune. But music is really interesting because it the way the magic of music works in my world is it works on resonant frequencies and harmonics and things like that. So it's just sort of an extension of how, and we all know that music can make us feel happy or sad. It has a huge effect on our emotions. And so it's like, well, what if that actually had an effect on us in the physical, a more obvious effect in the physical world?
I love that. Allison made me laugh, so I'm sure you'll enjoy this, Jen. Did I marry my husband just so I can call myself a bard, maybe a bird? Thanks for the laugh, Allison. You are the co-founder and also the managing editor of Pulp Literature. Can you tell us what you do within your company, first off, and then we'll go to the second question on that?
Well, I kind of manage most of the production, and we have a group of editors. So I've got Mel, my co-founder, is still working on the magazine, and we've got Jen Wynand, who's the acquisitions editor. But I kind of manage. I sort of keep all the little strings together. So I'm fairly heavily involved in story editing and development, not necessarily on every story, but I still do quite a lot of that, and slush reading and things like that. But I also have to do the accounting and all that fighting stuff. Yeah, that wouldn't be my favorite either, Jen. No. It doesn't, I don't mind numbers. I'm actually, I'm fairly good with numbers, but it's just like not what I'd rather be doing.
You are very much a master weaver, is what I'm going to call you, just because you have your hand beautifully woven in all these different pieces within your life. That's just kind of, like you said, you've mentioned the string a couple times. You're just weaving and stringing everything together, which is such a beautiful, you're a master weaver. So you have, with Pulp Literature, I love that you're doing retreats, workshops, you're doing one-on-one sessions now, but also there's a Ravens short story competition that's up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that one opens September 1st. So it is for short stories that are 2,500 words or less, or fewer. And it's our final judge this year is Leo X. Robertson, who's a Scottish writer and filmmaker living in Norway. And he's done a few stories for us as well. And the most recent one was Bar Hopping for Astronauts, which was a wonderful short story. So if you like to write to the judges, go and read Leo's work, and you'll get an idea of his taste. But it's the contest opens September 1st. It closes October 15th, but there's an early bird rate. So if you get it in by September 15th, you save a little bit of money. And there is the opportunity as well to get a critique from one of our editors for $25, which is a really good price for a critique. Because normally critiques are about, we'll do them for about $50 per, 3 or 4 pages. So getting one for $25 is good.
Mm-hmm. And your sessions, can you tell us a little bit about, did you have the sessions before COVID hit, or is that something that you started through that time?
You mean the hour story sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing them for a long time. Like we started, like I said, Melsu and I have written that way for years and years before the magazine even. And then early on with the magazine, we started opening it up and letting other people come. Those were in person mostly, often in Sue's dining room. And then during COVID, we started doing them on Discord, and we've done a few of those. And the retreats are kind of like larger versions of that, where you go for a full day. We did a few 3-day retreats as well, but we just found the organization of that it was too much work. And the 1-day retreat is nice. You go to Bowen Island, you step onto this magical island, you write all day, you eat good food, and then you go home. and you're kind of like, it's just like a little circuit breaker, break. But yeah, those, I mean, and we do those. That helps fund the magazine as well. The costs of retreats and our writing. When we run our story sessions.
I love retreats, and I feel like that really, at least for me, brings creative juice to have that moment of pause. Kind of like you said, that circuit of just having time to be kind of cleanses your creativity and opens up that space more fully.
Yeah.
We'll put those in the comments, Jen, of the retreats that are coming up, as well as the contest and the sessions, so they can have easy access.
We don't actually have any retreats coming up. We stopped them during COVID, so the in-person ones. But if you are interested, do go to our page anyway and put your name down, and we will contact you as soon as we do book them. We're not quite ready to do the in-person yet.
Totally. That's why the one-on-one sessions virtually are a nice option at the moment. Yeah. We're going to take it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Jen?
Sure.
Okay. So you teach swords play, which I think is super fun and amazing. Arya in the Game of Thrones has her favorite weapon of choice and names it Needle. Do you have a weapon of choice that's your favorite, and does it have a name?
My favorite weapon is my rapier, and it does not have a name. None of my swords have names. I don't know. I just never. But the rapier, which is the 16th, 17th century dueling weapon, is my weapon of choice. Although from horseback, I use a longsword because it's much more practical.
Now, what does it look like? Give us kind of a detail, if you would.
If I'd known you were going to ask that, I would have just brought it on. But if you look at the photo that you put up in that card, I'm holding my rapier, so you can see the complex hilt of it there. So my profile picture has that, and I do have a longsword here beside my desk, but it is a nylon one and not a steel one. Steel ones are elsewhere, but it looks like that. It's just
lovely.
So it's about a yard long. Oh, there we go. Yeah, and that's the ones we use from horseback. They're just nylon training swords.
With that, so I have a research question for you. Just seeing the sword. What kind of a sword would you use in combat that would be realistic or accurate, so it's easy to fling out for someone who's not done any swords play but is interested in doing writing about it? What is something that you could pull out that would be easy access to pull from your back, and it still would be something you could grip and use swiftly without it knocking you off your horse?
Back scabbards are quite impractical. It's really hard to draw a sword from your back because of the length, right? So it's like, if this is behind my back, if it's in a scabbard that's fixed, I actually can't. This is too long for me. I cannot get it out. So anything on your back has to be short, or have some sort of breakaway scabbard or a loose scabbard. So if the scabbard is not tied down at the back, then when you pull it out, it just pulls down. That's why most most knights wore their swords on their hips, because that also doesn't get in the way when you're mounting your horse. It's why we mount horses on the left side, because we hang our swords on the left side, and then we're not swinging the sword over the horse's back when we get on. So yeah, if you want something on your back, it better be less than your arm length.
Okay, well, that definitely helped with my research. I was writing it extremely wrong. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you for being here with us. Second question, Jen. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
Sorry, the oddest food combo that I've tried. At one point, when my husband and I, before we were, partners, we were living in the same group house. Somebody at that house served baked beans with pirate peanut butter cookies. That was definitely the oddest combination. I don't know that I actually liked it.
Now, when you're saying served, are we talking about separate or together?
Bowl with a peanut butter cookie. The pirate ones with the icing in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I've definitely never tried that. On the show, Jen, I try everything that's odd that people recommend, so I'll make sure to tag you.
Okay. I'm not actually recommending it. I'm just saying that's the oddest thing I've tried.
Because I'm trying to think. Peanut butter is pretty strong by itself, and then you got the baked bean flavors, which can be very strong too. So
they're pretty sugar. I mean, baked beans are pretty sugary, so
that's true.
Yeah. All
right, that's a late night snack when I'm editing. You could get a sugar hype. Okay.
With protein.
with protein, yes, with the peanut butter and the beans for sure.
Yeah.
All right, anyone who wants to try this with me, take a picture and then we'll tag Jen in all of our meals. Last question. You've made a statement in book one, which was one of the comments that I laughed out loud, where it said, "Curiosity overcame my resistance." And I laughed because I resonated with that comment. When has been a time where curiosity overcame your resistance, and why?
Oh, good question. Actually, curiosity is the thing that usually causes me to overcome my resistance. Like if I'm resistant to anything, if somebody can make me, think what if, or maybe I need to try it, that is the thing that will overcome it. So yeah, I would say things. I'm usually pretty open to trying all sorts of things. There are some foods I don't like, and some foods I won't try. Bugs. But I did try vaulting on horseback, and that was something that was like to get on a horse without shoes on is a really weird thing for me. Like, you wear boots around horses all your life, and it's like when I see people, wearing flip-flops around horses, I just cringe, because I've had my feet stepped on before with good boots and still lost a toenail. But so it was a big step for me to try vaulting, because you wear kind of like little rhythmic gymnastic slippers for that. So being around a giant horse with just slippers on my feet, but the curiosity was, can I do this? And so it was the challenge of can I do this? Yes, I can. And I did it. So
yes. It's always a good feeling too when you do something that you weren't sure you were able to do, like that accomplishment after. That feeling's so great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, but like I said, the resistance was just being around the horse without shoes on. I wasn't scared of being, trying to kneel on the horse's back or stand, and even though that was challenging, but it was like, oh, that mental block of I don't have anything on my feet.
Especially, I can imagine if it's familiar to you, having that change of pace too.
Yeah.
Where can they find you, Jen, if they have any questions about your books coming out or about pulp literature?
So on most social media platforms, I am at JM Landels, so I'm pretty easy to find on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can also, for pulp literature, go to the Pulp Literature website, pulpliterature.com, and you can also find out about the books there. There'll be lots of announcements there. And I do have my own website, JM Landels at Stiff Bunnies, but I'm not keeping it up very well. And if you want to find out about swords and horses, academiecavallo.ca.
Perfect. And we'll add all those links in below as well. And before we end today, Jen, what advice can you give our listeners on living a creative life?
I would say choose fun and interesting over work, because work is always there, dusting is always there, dishes are always there. Getting that extra hour at the office, what's that going to do in the long run? But if you can choose to do something that's fun and different and interesting, that is going to spark your creativity.
Thank you for being here with us, Jen. You are so much fun. I'm going to go try that meal, probably wait a week, but I will tag you. And thank you for all of those who have joined us today. We will see you right here next Monday at 1:00 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you for being here and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Laurie.